around, I'll drag them out and show you.
Okay,
I'll
cool.
hang on to them.
Okay. I'll
And
definitely
there's a
take
record player too.
Awesome.
I'm not an old record player.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of them I like, but the rest of them I'm quite game. I gave some to a friend of mine who's a musician. He liked all the old, they were some of the bluegrass stuff.
Oh yeah, that's nice to listen to every once in a while.
Yeah. He plays banjo and stuff like that.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late.
Hello.
Technical difficulties.
We're still missing two.
Yeah, Mark. Who are we missing? Mark is having technical issues.
And Jim.
I have no idea where Jim is. I haven't heard from Jim.
He's not home. Here, is he? Oh, wait, Wanda's not in today. No, I don't know if he's here or not. No, he would have come in and said hi, I guess. Well, he must be back. Mark is.
Yeah, I mean, we can always get started without him and join when they want. So give me a second here.
So just let me know what you want me to do.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have quorum, so
okay,
we can start. We will start whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
Okay, I think I'll call.
Oh, here comes Jim.
Well, here's Mike. This is like that gopher thing. Oh, he's back. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Does anyone have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, we have a public meeting. Welcome and good afternoon. Today, there is one public meeting regarding a proposed development application in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meeting was sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property. Signage was also posted on the subject property to provide information about the application. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for statutory public meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to inform and provide the public and the Planning and Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of the public meeting will be as follows. Number one, the applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the application. 2, Township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant or their agent. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And lastly, the members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting for the application, the applicant, their agent, and if required, Township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today following the public meeting on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including the questions and comments submitted by the members of the public and the committee, will assist the township and the applicant's team to determine next steps. Should substantial questions or concerns remain unanswered, an additional public meeting may be scheduled or a report returned to this committee if additional information is requested. Once the township is satisfied with the information provided by the applicants and their consultants, this committee may recommend the bylaw to be considered by council, as the township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If in future Township Council decides in favor of the application by adopting the recommendations from this committee, the members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decision may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meeting by YouTube, Zoom, or telephone may email or call the Township's Planning Department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision of the application. I now call on the applicant's agent, Lauren Arsenault and Victoria Lemieux from Morgan Planning and Development to please present the information provided within item C131 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of this application. Good afternoon, Lauren.
Good afternoon, Chair Cox and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. Just give me a second and I'll share my screen with everyone. Can everybody see that?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Lauren Arsenault and I'm a junior planner with Morgan Planning and Development. I'm here with my colleague, senior planner Victoria Lemieux, and we are available to answer any questions that you may have after the presentation. Morgan Planning and Development prepared a planning justification report in support of a zoning bylaw amendment on behalf of the owner of 3599 Hampshire Mills Line in Severn. This application is required as a condition of consent, application B1622, which was provisionally approved by Severn's Committee of Adjustment on October 18th of last year. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to prevent any future residential development on the proposed severed parcel and permit a wildlife conservation center on the subject property. The Wildlife Conservation Center is called Speaking of Wildlife, and it operates within an existing building located on the subject lands. The operation is licensed by the ministry and provides a sanctuary for approximately 40 native, non-releasable wildlife, including bobcats, wolves, coyotes, beavers, and owls within the building and associated enclosures. The subject lands are located northwest of the settlement area of Artria on the northeast side of Hampshire Mills Line. The lands were recently subject to a consent application to create one new rural lot to separate the existing wildlife conservation use from the existing agricultural uses. The provisionally approved severed lot has approximately 146 meters of frontage on Hampshire Mills Line and approximate lot area of 31 acres. Here is the Severn sketch, which was submitted for the consent application. You can see the lands to be severed in yellow, which are the lands subject to this application. The retained lands are used for agricultural uses, which include an accessory single detached dwelling, and you can see the unevaluated wetlands delineated in blue. Here is an aerial image of the subject lands. You can see the location of the conservation center, as well as a pipeline corridor that bisects the property. The rest of the lands are used for cattle grazing. As previously mentioned, the purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment is to prevent any future residential development on the severed parcel in order to protect the existing agricultural uses. Further, the zoning bylaw amendment seeks to definitively permit the use of the Wildlife Conservation Center as existing. The effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the severed lands from the rural zone to a site-specific rural exception zone. The site-specific exception will provide a site-specific definition for the Wildlife Conservation Center and prohibit future residential development. The photo on the left is of the existing building. Some animals are kept inside the building at different parts of the year. However, visitors are generally not permitted in the building. There are enclosures on either side of the building where animals are housed, as well as fence areas, as you can see on the photo on the right. The fenced enclosures are used for some of the larger animals. Here's the zoning matrix, which identifies how the provisionally approved parcels fulfill the zoning requirements. The subject lands are zoned rural and designated agricultural and rural by the township's official plan. Under the PPS, the most directly applicable policy areas are Section 2.1 Natural Heritage Policies and Section 1.15 Rural Lands Policies. The intent of the natural heritage policies is to protect the natural heritage features for the long term, and Hutchinson Environmental Services Limited were retained for the severance and confirmed that given there's no change to the use of the property or any development proposed, all natural heritage policies have been adhered to. The zoning bylaw amendment is intended to also prevent future residential development to protect the existing agricultural and natural heritage functions. The subject lands would be considered rural lands under the PPS, which permits agricultural uses. The wildlife conservation use will not hinder the existing agricultural uses on the subject property or on any of the surrounding lands. Further, section 1153 promotes recreational tourism and other economic opportunities where appropriate. The Wildlife Conservation Center provides a unique recreational tourism and economic opportunities that focus on the education of native wildlife to the community. Morgan Planning and Development is of the opinion that the zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement. The most directly applicable policies under the growth plan are the natural heritage system policies and rural area policies, which are very similar. The zoning bylaw amendment is applicable with these policies as no new physical development or site alteration is proposed, and the zoning bylaw amendment will not result in any negative impacts on or adjacent to any key natural heritage features, nor any adjacent agricultural uses. Morgan Planning and Development is of the opinion that the zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The subject property is designated agricultural and rural within the townships of Severn's draft official plan. Section 11.2.2 of the township's draft OP outlines permitted uses within the natural heritage system designation. Existing agricultural operations and accessory uses are permitted, as well as forestry and conservation uses. Further, lawfully established existing uses are permitted as of the date of the adoption of the new official plan. Morgan Planning and Development is of the opinion that the zoning bylaw amendment application conforms to the vision and guiding principles of the township's official plan. In conclusion, Morgan Planning and Development feel the application conforms to the intents and policies of the Township of Severn official plan, the County of Simcoe official plan, the provincial policy statement, and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The surrounding neighborhood is largely characterized by rural and agricultural lands. The built form is existing and compatible with the surrounding area. Furthermore, the proposed ZBA would restrict any future residential development on the subject lands to ensure that the rural character is maintained. The existing Wildlife Conservation Center does not hinder the existing agricultural activities that occur on the subject property or abutting lands. The existing use supports the agricultural and rural community by providing an educational opportunity for youth and the public regarding native wildlife to engage and connect with the community. Thank you for your attention and consideration. We are available to answer any questions you may have regarding the application.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Does staff Township Planner Brad Oster have anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments to make, not too much, as Ms. Arsenault did a really good summary of the application. So just as a refresher, the application has been brought forward as it is a requirement or a condition that was imposed by the Committee of Adjustment on consent application B16-22. The consent or the severance application sought to sever the wildlife conservation use from, the wildlife conservation use and agricultural uses from the agricultural and accessory residential uses, which were on the same lands. The township zoning bylaw does permit as of right wildlife conservation uses within the rural zone that is currently applied to the subject lands. And in 2016, a building permit was issued for the construction of an agricultural building on these lands. Since then, the use has just sort of naturally evolved beyond the permitted agricultural and wildlife conservation uses that are permitted as of right, and therefore this application is seeking to clarify and permit that the existing use would be allowed to operate on site. Additionally, this application does seek to prohibit all residential uses on these proposed severed lands in accordance with current provincial policy. A site-specific definition of a wildlife conservation center is proposed to scope the use and limit the operation to providing sanctuary to non-releasable Ontario wildlife, along with an educational aspect. The educational use would not be permitted to occur within the existing building, and any tours or educational aspects must be guided by staff and on an appointment basis only. Further bus tours have also been prohibited on site due to limited access to the site and the ability to accommodate vehicles of that size. Township staff do agree with the policy analysis presented by Ms. Lemieux and Ms. Arsenault. And the Township Clerk did advise that there is a future animal care and control bylaw being prepared, but that it would be drafted to ensure that there would be no conflicts with this proposed use sought with this application today. Staff would advise the committee and members of the public that the lands would be subject to site plan control to ensure that the more technical matters are addressed, such as parking requirements, signage, pathways, exterior lighting, accessibility, and vegetation preservation. And therefore, staff are generally supportive of the application, and pending any public, agency, and committee comments today, we would recommend approval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Are there any persons present on Zoom or the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak? Please unmute yourself when recognized and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the Township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourself now and give your name and address for the minutes. Okay. Seeing none. Could the Township's planner, Brad Oster, please summarize any additional correspondence that has been submitted on this application and provide any further information?
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the 3 comments which were attached to today's public agenda, we did receive comments from Enbridge, just stating no objections to the application, but reserving the right for future comment.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Do members of the committee have any comments? Okay. Seeing none, do we have I guess, if there are no further comments, then I declare the public meeting on this proposal is closed. And I guess, Madam Clerk, do you have a motion? Do you have a motion?
I do.
Thank you.
The motion reads that planning report number P23-011 dated April 19th, 2023 with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z2301 for the subject lands located at 3665 Hampshire Mills line be received. And further, that a draft zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council for consideration at the next available meeting, subject to comments received prior to council's consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment, including additional submissions from council, the Planning and Development Committee, members of the public, circulated agencies, and township departments.
Madam Chair, can you hear me? Madam Chair? Sorry,
Yes.
I, for some reason, may I speak? I'm sorry. I was trying to wave my card, but my screen was frozen. I know.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead, speak.
So through you, Madam Chair, thank you. And I just want to thank everyone, our staff, for moving forward with this. I know if you saw the wolf that was there in the first picture, I knew that wolf as a baby. The Hewitts have been in our township, and I don't want to guess how many years, but good presentation, Lauren. I would just encourage all members of council, if you ever have a chance to stop by, it's a very well-run operation. I just want to thank Crystal and her crew for what they've done on this piece of property. So just thank you.
Yes, it is amazing what they have done. Okay, do you want to read the motion again, or did everybody catch it?
Certainly, I believe that Member Taylor has joined us via phone.
Okay.
So, Member Taylor, are you there?
Okay. So I guess I can ask for a move and a seconder.
Yes.
Okay, moved by.
Oh, wait a minute. There he is.
He just said he could hear us.
I'm back.
Okay.
Okay.
So moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. All in favor?
Yeah.
Councillor Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to D, delegations. Please be advised that in accordance with Council's procedural bylaw, no decision will be made this afternoon on the delegations. The committee will do one of the following: refer the matter for a staff report, refer the matter to future budget deliberations, or take no action. So I will welcome Celeste Phillips, Planning Inc.
Hello,
Celeste. How are you?
I'm great.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
You do know our time limit? Sorry.
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Cox and members of the committee, township staff and members of the public. My name is Celeste Phillips and I'm a land use planning consultant. And I am speaking to you today on behalf of a numbered company that owns the lands municipally known as 2956 Southern Road in Coldwater. So I will just share my screen now. Hopefully you can see that now. Great. As I mentioned, Brian Smith and Ron Sheardown are the principals, or if I didn't mention, I'm mentioning it now, they're the principals of 453211 Ontario Limited, the company that owns the property, and they're in attendance today as well. And at the outset, I would like to say that there has been no planning application filed respecting this property. And secondly, when an application is filed, it will be subject to notification requirements stipulated in the Planning Act. And there is a requirement for council to hold a public meeting. So today is really an introductory meeting only, where we are seeking the committee's thoughts about a proposed planning application. And I wanted to be clear that there's no plan that I'm aware of to add 300 homes to Coldwater. So this application is really just to seek committee's thoughts about it before it is actually submitted.
Thank you, Celeste, for clarifying that.
This slide shows the location of the property, and it has the number 2956 on it. That's the property we're speaking about today. It's located on the north side of Southern Road. It has that municipal address of 2956, and it is about 25 acres in size. It is south of the Greenwood Landing subdivision plan, which is currently under construction. And it is north of an established residential area on the south side of Southern Road. So what I'm showing the committee in this slide is everything identified in yellow is being used currently, or will be, in terms of Greenwood Landing, as residential uses. So the property is kind of squeezed between residential to the north, south, and east, and Novani is located to the west of the property. The next slide I will show you is just a little bit of information about the property. 25 acres, it's designated industrial and employment. And the purpose in attending today is to seek the committee's thoughts about a redesignation of these lands to an employment special policy category. And an employment and fiscal benefit study has been done for these lands, and it looked at what opportunities there are for development of this property and concluded that the lands have very poor visibility and access for industrial purposes, which is what they're designated for. The current permitted uses include manufacturing, wholesale, and retail, transportation, and warehousing, uses that generally would create a land use conflict when you have residential uses that are so proximate to the property. So the report that was prepared by the economists suggested that there would be land use compatibility issues if this property was used for industrial purposes. And as you know, it has remained vacant for as long as I've known. So this is the proposed plan, again, not submitted yet, a plan that's being presented to you today just to get your thoughts on where we wish to go with this. The special policy designation that would be sought would permit a mixed use development rather than an industrial development. And it would consist of service residential, lots, live work units, single detached, and townhouse units. So I'll just give you a brief description. Again, you see Novani is located on the west side of the property, the left-hand side in that rectangular building. The developing area along Harold and Brandon Avenue is located to the north or the top left part of the slide. So next to, excuse me, next to Novani, what is proposed is a berm to shield that industrial use to what is being proposed here. Next to that would be 7 service residential lots, and those are in the darkest yellow color on this slide. And we're proposing that these lots would be of interest to tradespeople such as plumbers, independent contractors, or electricians who would need extra lot area for an accessory structure as well as their residential dwelling. And these lots would be about 100 feet wide. On the south side of the property next to Southorn, we would have a 10-meter landscape berm. And in that area, what is proposed are 18 live work units that would allow small businesses such as an accountant or an architect, perhaps a sole practitioner who has 1 or 2 employees. And those lots would be between 65 and 72 feet wide. And then in the center of the property in the palest yellow and on the east side of the property, we're proposing regular single detached lots with 15 meters of frontage or 50 feet of frontage. And to the north would be a connecting road to the Greenwood Landing subdivision, as well as a stormwater management pond, and 15 townhouse lots are shown in that location. So that's what's being proposed and would be the subject of a planning application submitted to the township. This slide really just details the division of the lot types that I've mentioned to you, and I would just mention that in total there would be 89 lots. So the economist has concluded that there are significant fiscal benefits to the township if these lands were to be developed as proposed as a special policy area. There would be $1.8 million in development charges that would be paid to the township. There would be 9 times the current property tax revenue would be realized. And that would be 4 times what would be generated if the lands were developed with industrial uses. And of course, as the lands are vacant and in a settlement area, to see these lands developed would be a productive use of land. And the concept plan that I presented to you represents changes that we're seeing in employment land in Ontario, with more live work, smaller independent contractors. And this being sort of a gateway to Muskoka, it's a great opportunity for electricians and plumbers to have a home base in Coldwater and some room for their equipment in an accessory structure. And another benefit, of course, is that new residents in Coldwater will support your businesses downtown. We're in a time of fast changes to provincial policy, and it is a little bit difficult to keep up. We've had Bill 109, Bill 23, and most recently we had a new planning statement issued by the province. So I will start with the growth plan that's in play right now. That's the 2020 growth plan for the Golden Horseshoe. And there is a policy in that document that does permit non-employment uses within existing employment areas. And that's subject to a few criteria. there has to be an identified need for the use. And of course, we know there's a desperate need for housing in the province of Ontario. There can't be an adverse effect on the viability of the employment area. And we've been very careful about ensuring that there is a berm separating these lands from the Lavandi property. There needs to be existing or planned infrastructure and public service facilities. And it's my understanding that there will be infrastructure to accommodate the proposed uses. And there needs to be a berm or a buffer, as I've mentioned. And then the lands can't be part of a provincially significant employment zone. And these lands are not part of a provincially significant zone. And then with the new policy statement or planning statement that was issued for public comment, that was issued on April 6th, among a number of permissive changes to the land use planning framework in the province of Ontario, the policy related to allowing non-employment uses in employment areas has been sort of drilled down to just 3 key factors that need to be considered, and that is need, impact to the viability of the area, and there has to be the existing or planned infrastructure to accommodate the use. So it's been a more permissive policy than is currently in place. And my final slide, on behalf of my clients, I'm seeking firstly the committee's comments on what is being contemplated for these lands, and we're happy to hear from you about what your thoughts are. And then secondly, if you felt comfortable with it, we would like to see a motion with support in principle for a special policy designation for the lands, subject to, of course, this being a mixed-use development and subject to a number of reports that would be typical with a planning application, which are listed here. And of course, statutory public meeting as is required by the Planning Act. And that concludes my presentation, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and I'm available as well as Brian Smith and Ron Sheardown to respond to any questions you have. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you very much, Celeste. Excellent presentation, lots of information. Any members of the committee have any questions? Member Jansen. Then Member Minnings.
First off, thank you very much for providing the presentation. Ms. Phillips, I definitely appreciate that. I do want to acknowledge, I guess, some information about the proposal went out to some of our community members here in Coldwater, and I did receive quite a few residents reaching out to myself, a couple of people in support of the proposal, but the vast majority against the proposed development and the zoning change request. So I do want to acknowledge the concerns that came forward, which range from the environmental impact to cutting down trees on the subject land, increased traffic, the speed at which development is occurring within our community, pressures on our school, our wastewater plant, and our current capacity for our water facilities. I mostly feel, though, that residents were concerned that there was no public consultation around this. However, I do hear today that if there was planning application to go forward, there would be an opportunity for the public to have their say, which I think would be greatly appreciated. I do know that at the moment, no application's been put forward. But I do want to just say, whenever development is being considered, I do hope that the public has that opportunity, not only to provide input to myself, but to provide input to the township and the rest of council when these are being considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Minnings.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I do have some questions, mainly about the, sorry, I'm pulling up my presentation copy, the live work units. And I know you spoke to those. When I'm looking at the diagram, I know it's not specific. There's no markings as far as lot sizes, etc. But I'm not familiar with a new development that has live work units within it. And I was wondering if there was such an area that you could mention to me so that I can have a better understanding as to how that works. From the diagram in your presentation, and from your presentation, you mentioned outbuildings that certain business owners would be able to have on their properties. And those lots don't appear to be any wider than some of the residential areas that are identified. So I'm just wondering how that would actually come together in a new subdivision.
Sure. Would you like me to respond, Chair Cox?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Minnings, probably the most well-known example of live work, and one of the first ones that I was introduced to is in Markham. It's called Cornell. And that whole community was designed with all sorts of aspects, but a big component of it was live work units. And to a great extent, the ground floor was used for, let's say, the architectural firm, and the architect and his family lived above. Over time, I've seen that change to it depends on the type of sole practitioner that there would be, but generally it's the person who is living there perhaps runs an accounting business in the basement, has one employee that comes in for the day. So it's the intent is for the person who is the sole practitioner to be living there and to have a small office component associated with their business. With respect to the outbuildings, so I'm just showing you the slide here. I hope you can see it. So I'm showing the dark yellow lots in this location here. And those lots are about 100 feet wide. So they would allow for a home as well as an accessory structure of some sort. So let's say you were an electrician, it would allow for you to keep whatever you need to operate your business in that outbuilding. So these lots here are about twice the width. These ones in the interior are 50-foot lots. And these ones backing onto Navani would be 100 feet wide.
Okay, thank you.
Member McIntyre, I think I saw your card up.
Thank you, Chair. Question for Ms. Phillips and perhaps the gentlemen who are the principals here. I just wondered, I don't feel that the project's very big. I mean, it's not the biggest project that will come before us in the next little bit. It's not so big that we can't at least give it a good look. I think it's probably the highest and best use for this land in that particular area of that they're proposing here. The only question I have, and perhaps Ms. Phillips through you to the two principals, is does the water and sewer capacity, is there room for this sort of development within the cold water and sewer needs? It's just a question whether if there's got consistent running of commercial businesses and so on and live and so on, that there be enough water and capacity to take the water away.
Mr. Burke, did you want to answer that, please?
Certainly, thank you through the chair. Yeah, so the plan for the wastewater system in cold water is to expand, and we're actually underway with a municipal class environmental assessment at the moment. And to date, this area has been actually already allocated a portion of the existing capacity reserve that's left, but it probably does not meet the full build out that I see here today. But yeah, the water and sewer systems are being designed and upgraded to match the intended growth for the area. So I do assume that given time, that will be the case.
Thank you very much. Member McIntyre.
Supplemental through the chair. I just wondered about the revenue numbers that Ms. Phillips put forward. Are those general numbers, hard numbers? I think that anytime we can make a little more revenue for the township, the corporation itself, is a good idea. I just how close are we on those numbers, or is that a first guess estimate? Like the 9 times, et cetera, and the what you said earlier in your presentation about the revenue stream would be increased.
Yes, so those numbers were done by a land economist, and his company name is Parcel Economics. And his work involves looking, he does work all across Ontario. His name is Craig Ferguson. He runs a firm that does a lot of economic impact studies. I'm quite confident with his numbers, but I can assure you that his report would form part of the mission package to the town when the planning application is filed. And the numbers that he's come up with, the 1.8 million in DC payable to the township, that's a fairly easy calculation because you base it on 89 units times whatever you charge for whatever each time you pull a permit. So that number is pretty firm. The current property tax revenue on this property is, fairly insignificant given it's a vacant property. So the use of this property for industrial purposes would provide you with a certain tax rate. With 89 residential units, live, work, and service residential, the tax rate would be much higher. So yes, I think the numbers are fairly reasonable, and those numbers are probably will go up over time as your DCs, your development charges are increased, as well as your tax rates.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions from any of the members?
Yeah, Member Cox, if I could.
Yes. Thank you, Member Taylor.
Okay, hopefully I have to slide up here, but just to go over the 7 service residential lots, you said were 100 feet, and then the live work units, how wide are those lots? Because you see they're wider than the residential lots.
65 to 72 feet wide.
Okay, and whereas the big 7 service lots are 100 feet.
That's correct.
And how do we know that these will be used for trades and not being used for trades?
I think what the best approach is, and what I've seen elsewhere, is that when the application is submitted, the planning application for the rezoning, a draft rezoning bylaw is attached to that. And I think council would want to be assured that the zoning for the different type of lots is quite specific to allow not only a single detached dwelling on, and if we're talking about the service residential or the live work, but also has allowances to allow for those individual independent contractors or those sole practitioner businesses. So it would be in the zoning that you would see the precise wording that permits those uses.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members have questions? Okay, I have a couple things. I do realize that I don't totally understand Bill 97, which I'm sure no one does, but it does seem to me that they are promoting mixed use development in employment lands. But following along that vein, I would like planning staff to please explain the process of redesignating land from employment to residential or special, what you talked about, Celeste, just so that we all get our head around what it would entail to have happen. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all. So I'd just like to reiterate what Ms. Phillips outlined in her presentation, that there's currently no applications before the township regarding the subject lands. A landowner can certainly make an application or multiple applications under the Planning Act to propose new or alternative uses on their lands, which includes a public consultation process. Complete applications must be supported by the required studies. They're evaluated and then presented to council in a staff report, considering provincial, county of Simcoe, sorry, I'm losing my voice, county of Simcoe and township policies. And then from there, council would make a decision or make an endorsement depending on the type of application. So as Ms. Phillips mentioned, these are currently designated for employment in both our existing in effect official plan, as well as our newly adopted official plan, which has not yet been approved by the County of Simcoe. The lands are zoned general industrial, which would currently permit uses such as business offices, warehousing, or compatible light industrial uses through a site plan approval application. Through the township's recently adopted official plan and the county's most recently adopted official plan amendment number 7, both indicate that the township is actually currently in a deficit of employment lands to meet our anticipated growth to 2051. What we do know is we do have adequate lands available to accommodate our projected residential growth. The expansion of settlement areas within the township are likely the process we're going to have to go through to identify additional appropriate employment lands, those lands that have convenient access to highways 11, 12, 400 rail lines, that sort of thing. And so we'll have to work with the county, the approval body for our official plan, to continue to monitor the most recent provincial announcements and changes to the land use planning system and go from there. So those are some thoughts, Madam Chair, certainly here for questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Member Burkett.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair, and to Ms. Woodrow, and I hate to put you on the spot, but based on what you've just told us, and without a formal application from the developers so that our residents understand and have the opportunity, and if they do decide to move forward with an application, would there be 1 or 2 public meetings where our residents could actually voice their concerns? Is that how it would work?
If I may, Madam Chair, through you to
Yes.
Member Burkett, certainly, depending on the type of application, for official plan amendments and subdivisions, the township actually requires 2 public meetings as set out in our official plan. The Planning Act sets out 1 public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment, but those are minimums. Council or committee can always request more information and host additional meetings as required. Also, applicants are typically asked to provide their own public consultation strategy. We've seen this in some cases where landowners host their own open houses as well, in addition to the requirements of the Planning Act and the official plan.
Supplementary through you, Madam Chair, if I may, to Ms. Woodrow, and I know that we may not have an answer for this, but as it stands today, we had a new official plan that we passed last fall. And in that plan, the employment lands, and we are in a deficit, as you stated. But the new bill that the province still has not approved may or may not take the County of Simcoe as the deciding authority in or out of the equation. How would that affect what these developers are trying to do if they so choose down the road to make an application?
If I may, Madam Chair, through you to Member Burkett, certainly the landowners can make application through the appropriate process supported by the required studies, and we would work with our consultants and peer reviewers here at the township in the absence of the county to evaluate those proposals. But all of that would have to follow the standard application process where the appropriate studies are identified and evaluated appropriately.
Great, thank you.
Member Brennan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So with the explanation that we likely got to add settlement areas anyway, this is a 25-acre parcel, but I'm just trying to understand, in the slide deck, it says that there is no negative impact on employment. So I don't understand what that means if, in fact, we do have to add 25 acres somewhere else. Can someone explain that, please?
Sorry, Mr. Brett, who said that? I'm sorry, was it
in the slide deck?
Okay.
In the slide deck,
go ahead.
There's a statement that says it's in there a couple of times, actually.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it is. And it is one of the tests that you see in the growth plan. One of the tests, if you're going to be pursuing complete change from employment to another category, there are certain criteria that you have to meet. And one of those criteria is that can't have a negative impact. I'm just looking for the exact wording. No adverse effect on the viability of employment area. So in this case, I guess two things I'd like to point out is, first of all, this is not a change to completely redesignate the lands to a residential category. It's a mixed use development that would still have an employment component. That is sole practitioners operating out of live work units, and then service residential for independent contractors. So there's still definitely an employment component to this. It's not a complete overhaul of removing employment land from your inventory. It's just a variation of employment uses that reflect what we're seeing in the Ontario economy. And then secondly, with respect to the adverse effect on the viability of employment area, we know from the economist that has been working on this file that this property does not have good visibility and not good access for a typical manufacturing operation. So what we looked at is, how do we protect Novanni so that it may continue to operate in that location? And the way to do that, in my opinion, is to provide assurances that there's going to be a berm of substantial height of some sort that's going to provide a buffer, and then put the service residential uses close to that, which would be the people that would have structures in their backyard for the storage of their equipment. So those are the two responses I would give to you, Councillor.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a supplementary, if I could direct this to Ms. Woodrow. So based on that, then the area that we would lose would be proportional to the area of residential within this proposal. Is that correct? Like, because some of it is residential. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, would, 15 acres then have to be added that's not in there now? Is that how it works?
Go ahead, Ms. Woodrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Member Brennan. So just a brief reminder, these lands are currently designated for employment now, but we are still in a deficit, even with the lands in their existing designation. So if we are to anticipate and to grow to accommodate our 2051 employment numbers, we need to make up for the 36 hectares that we're currently in a deficit, plus any that we would, put in a special policy area potentially through the subject application, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from anyone? Go ahead. Go, Ms. Phillips. I
was just going to respectfully request, because this is a virtual meeting, if my clients had anything that they wanted to add it, I wondered if they could have that opportunity, just because I can't nudge them or ask them right now.
Go through the clerk on that one.
Not normally the way we operate, but if council wants to permit it.
We usually have a presentation. So
normally it's just one speaker on behalf of the presentation. Once an application is submitted, and if there's questions during the public meeting, then they would be able to respond.
Okay, I just have a couple of things. Personally, I like this idea because you've got residential on three sides. You also have a hill there, which is it's dicey for site plan, like sight lines along it. And then if you move that driveway away from Novanni and you go up closer, now you're having industrial entrance or commercial entrance with homes right across the road from it. I do know that this has been designated employment land for a very long period of time, and there have been no bites or no one's very interested in it. And I do think that we do have other places in our township, if we go the route of expanding our settlement area, that there could be potential employment lands closer to Highway 12 or 400. And I also have to feel that because of the people who live in the area, that I am sure that they would prefer a live and work unit or homes there compared to manufacturing or industrial across the road from their homes. That's just my opinions and concerns I am speaking to. And I think what we have to do now probably, and I will go to Madam Clerk, is we will have to take this as information until the application is received, and then it can be brought forward for a staff report. Is that right, Madam Clerk? Okay.
You are correct.
So I guess we'll need a motion, please.
Certainly. So the motion reads that the delegation by Celeste Phillips regarding a special policy designation for 2956 Southorn Road be received for information.
And I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Member McIntyre, seconded by Member Brennan. All in favor? Member Burkett, you're not here.
Well, I don't know what happened to my video. Sorry, madam, but I'm in favor. I'm voting yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I am too.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, thank you very much. I think you've probably got a feel on where the committee is on this, and we're looking forward to your application.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay, moving on to E, the consent agenda. I have E 1.1 or E 2.1. Does anyone want to pull any of these to speak to them? Okay, Madam Chair.
So the motion, thank you. I'm like, the motion to, you're the chair. The motion to adopt the agenda will read that the agenda be adopted, including consent items as circulated.
Moving a seconder, please. Moved by Member Burkett, second by Member Jansen. All in favor? Member Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Approval of the, okay. Reports from officials for direction. Planning report P23012, Turnbull Drive.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, I'm just going to share my screen here.
Hello, Mr. Robinson. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Madam Chair, are you able to see the key map?
Yes.
For you? Excellent, thank you. So the key map before you shows the subject property located at 3486 Turnbull Drive between Gray Shot Drive and Goldstein Road. The development on this property was draft plan approved back in 2012. Last year, Council approved 2 pre-servicing agreements to allow the landowners to undertake earthworks and commence the installation of roads and services for the development. A draft subdivision and site plan agreement before the committee today has now been finalized by the township solicitor to permit the completion of a subdivision consisting of a total of 181 homes. 58 of these homes will be 50-foot frontages as shown in yellow. 62 of them will be 60-foot frontages as shown in orange. And across the top of the plan in a peach color are 11 blocks which will contain 61 townhouse units. The subdivision includes lands that will be dedicated to the township, including 3 new streets, a park block in green, or block 140, 2 stormwater management ponds in purple, blocks 142 and 144, an open space block in pink, which is to buffer the Cunningham Bay Marsh, provincially significant wetland, and included throughout the subdivision in red is an integrated walkway and trail network. The agreement before you references the approved engineering and landscaping plans and the associated security deposits required from the landowner to ensure that the works are completed to our standards and satisfaction. And provisions are also included for future review of the townhouse layouts at the time of building permit. The agreement will allow the County of Simcoe as the current approval body for subdivisions in Severn to approve the creation of the lots and sign off to the Land Registry Office. And finally, the Public Works Department has confirmed that there is adequate sanitary and water capacity for all 181 units. If the subdivision agreement is approved, it will include a formal allocation of servicing to be held for a 3-year period from the date of approval. So that concludes my presentation, Madam Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Woodrow. Anybody in the committee have questions? Member Minnings.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair to Director Woodrow, and apologies, but my camera is not cooperating anymore. I have 2 questions. Does this show both phase 1 and phase 2 of the subdivision?
If I may, Madam Chair, through you to Member Minnings, essentially there is a phasing plan. I don't have it before me right now, but essentially it splits the subdivision in half vertically.
Okay, thank you. And a subsequent question, the red pathways that are marked in there, thank you very much. It was my understanding, and I'm going to make an assumption that everything sort of to the lower end of the pink on your diagram is Lake Couchiching or a road perhaps, but I was under the understanding that there's also going to be a pathway over a portion of the wetlands directly to a parcel of land that is also accessible and owned by the subdivision developers. And I don't see that on the map.
If I may, Member Cox, through you to Member Minnings. Yes, there is currently discussions regarding a potential connection from this subdivision to other lands owned by the applicant. However, that walkway is not included within the limits of this draft plan of subdivision, nor the conditions that were originally imposed. So it's actually a separate matter, to formulate good planning and connect lands owned by the same landowner, but actually forms a separate matter and application from this particular subdivision.
Thank you. And finally, is there I'm not sure of the correct term, is there something forward to your department from the planners separately about that access directly to the lot and the lake? Because when I attended the model home trailer that was set up for the subdivision, they spoke directly to me about that and had that on their promotional video, etc. So I'm just wondering about that, because that was definitely a selling feature when I was in there with friends who were purchasing. Thank you.
Go ahead. If I may, Madam Chair, through you to Member Minnings. So we certainly have a planning application to the south of the subject lands on Gray Shot for a park associated with this subdivision, although not directly connected from approvals perspective. And through that process, the connection is proposed as a good planning connection. However, it's being dealt with more through that separate application, which is a site plan application on lands outside of this subdivision.
Okay, Member Minnings?
Yes, thank you.
Member Taylor, did you have a question? Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Any other members on this? All right, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So the motion reads that planning report number P23-012 dated April 19th, 2023, with respect to subdivision site plan agreement with Live Lake Couchiching Residence GP Inc. and Live Lake Couchiching Residence LP for 3486 Turnbull Drive, file number SVT 0701 be received, and further that the Township of Severn approve the subdivision site plan agreement, including a development charges late payment agreement in substantial conformity with attachment 3. And further that staff be directed to prepare a draft bylaw to authorize the clerk to execute the agreements. And further that the applicable agreements be executed once all the conditions have been met, to be confirmed by the Director of Planning and Development. And further that the Township of Severn advise the County of Simcoe that there is sufficient drinking water and wastewater capacity available to service the entire plan of subdivision, 181 units. And further that the drinking water and wastewater capacity will be held in final allocation for a period of 3 years from the date of this report.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Minnings, second by Member Burkett. All in favor? Member Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any new business? No closed session. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so the motion reads that this meeting being is here now by adjourned at 2:03 p.m.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Member McIntyre, second by Member Burkett. All in favor?
Yes.
Carried. Thank you. Do you want to have a few minute break and then open up for the next one?
Yes,
Sure,
please.
we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, thank you very much.
So,
Take care.
Judah?
Yes? Wait, I gotta find
There
it.
he is. There he is.
We are ready to go.
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll begin with our land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather and which the Township of Severn operates is part of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples have been inhabiting and caring for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Ojibwe or Chippewas peoples. This territory is covered by Lake Simcoe Treaty 16 and the J. Collins Land Purchase. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. A moment of reflection, please, everyone. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Does anyone have any pecuniary interests? Seeing none, no public meetings, hearings, no presentations, consent agenda, adoption of regular agenda. None, so we need to go into closed session, Madam Clerk.
So first we'll adopt the agenda. So that
Oh,
motion,
sorry.
that's all right. The motion will read that the special council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Danson. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Yes, here too, Mike.
Thanks, Mark. Member Councillor Taylor.
Okay, so the next item is closed session. So the motion for that reads that committee resolved in a closed session that the meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to the Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392 for the purpose of considering position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on behalf or by or on the behalf of the municipality or local board.
Again, a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Deputy Mayor Cox. All in favor? That's carried.
Yes,
Thank you.
for sure.
Okay, who would like to start off?
Well, give me one. So the motion will read that council adjourned from the closed session at 3:14 p.m. and return to the regular meeting.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Deputy Mayor Cox. All in favor? That's carried.
Yes.
And then the
Could we have a
next,
bio break before we start the open?
Yes, we can have
sure,
a.
if I can just do the
Organizing
second part of the
text.
motion there.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. The motion reads that the confidential planning report number P23-014 regarding annexation preparedness, April update dated April 19th, be received, and further that MHBC and Township's planning staff proceed as directed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That's carried.
Yes.
Take a 5-minute bio break. Oh, that coffee was great. So we'll be discussing the item.
Gotta shut a door, I'm echoing.
The planning report with respect, to the delegation to council by Liv. Who would like to start off? Ms. Woodrow?
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. Through you, I'll just turn it over to Mr. Robinson as he coordinated the authoring of the report. Thank you.
I didn't see him. There he is. He hasn't come up yet.
Mr. Robinson hasn't popped his camera back on yet, so.
Okay.
Jamie, are you there?
I don't see him.
No.
He's not there.
I don't know if Miss Woodrow can start until he shows up.
Maybe, you know what you could do, Miss Woodrow? Just for the...
Oh, there he is.
Okay, Mr. Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. So this item relates to a deputation that was made at a previous council meeting, and this council asked staff to prepare a report with options for their consideration. In that regard, this report identifies 3 options that are included, and they relate to the Live community's request for support from the municipality for the ERO submission, which is the Environmental Registry of Ontario submission Live communities provided on OPA 7. And specifically that request related to inclusion of those Live community lands within a settlement area and support for that request. So this staff report's been provided. It provides 3 options. Basically, option 1 is that staff continue to monitor the county OPA 7 and any updates to that document, and that the municipality requests a timeline from the province for completion of OPA 7 and where it sits. The second option was that council pass the resolution that Live has identified, and the third option is that council not pass the resolution. So those are the 3 options that are available to council. In terms of the background information that's available, what's important from a policy perspective is that the township's current official plan, the provincial policy statement as it sits today, and the growth plan as it sits today would not support the request that, from a policy perspective, that Live has made. So if council was to proceed with any option, with option 2, for example, they would be doing so in a manner that is not consistent with the PPS or in conformity with the local official plan. But council is free to pass any resolution that they see fit in that regard. So the details, additional details, are in the report, but it's pretty succinct. So if there's any questions that members of council have, Your Worship, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Okay, I'll call you back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any member of council like to speak? I know Member Taylor, I can't see you. Maybe we'll let you go first if you have any questions. Or Councillor Taylor,
yeah,
sorry.
So, yeah, I'm just like I do like option 2, to be honest. I think that time is of the essence. We like to get more homes in there with somewhat control, and I think I stand by that decision on that one.
Thank you. Any members of council like to speak? Deputy Mayor Cox.
Through the chair to Mr. Robinson. Live presented us with a letter that they asked us to endorse about the settlement area on Vision Area 1, 2, 3, right? So I am just wondering if they're asking for our endorsement, does that mean that they haven't sent the letter in, or have they sent the letter, or do you know if they've sent the letter in?
Live, through Your Worship to the member, Live Communities did provide an ERO, a letter to the ERO and to that posting on OPA 7. So that has been sent already. So the province has that. What they're asking for is that council is a resolution in support of that ERO
Right.
posting that was made.
Okay.
And just for clarity, council did provide comments on that ERO posting themselves. So there was comments provided by council. It wasn't specific to Live Community's request or any other request, but it was.
No, we had put those in previously, right? In March?
Correct.
Okay. So then if that is already there, then the province is already aware of the fact that Live wants to expand this area and put in 800 new homes and a potential for 160 new long-term care beds. In your report, it says, and you've spoken to this, that's not supported by the township official plan, the county official plan, and the provincial policy official plan. But if you look at the fact that where it sits, it's almost obvious that because it has been passed to be able to be developed in the past, so for the future development, that it almost is it says, let's develop this and go. I guess what I'm trying to say is, they also say that they could do their own system, or they would ask a facilitator to help us with Aurelia to ensure that they could have services from Aurelia. So where I'm going with this is if we pick option 1, which is monitor, we could do that. But if we pass option 2 to the resolution proposed by Liv, would we not have to sort of have a report back from staff that says how we can do this without breaking the rules? Because it says right now that we really can't do that. And we would need a report back from staff with the consequences on how we would include this in either a separate area by itself, which the province shouldn't accept, but we don't know they may, or do we figure out how we would, as Liv put in their letter, that it may be part of the Marchmount Bass Lake woodlands. So what I'm saying is if we endorse it, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, and we would need some backup information once we endorse it to ensure that things might be able to happen. Like, what happens if we endorse it? This is where I'm going, and how would we, I'm going in circles, but this
maybe I can
sorry. You know where I'm going.
To your worship, to the deputy mayor, where I think you're going with this is that, and what's important to remember is that the reason Liv has provided the comments to the ERO is that they would like these lands to be within a settlement area. And the reason they provided those comments was that the province specifically asked, is there anyone with settlement? Effectively, what they asked to folks in Simcoe County was, is there anyone that would like their lands included within a settlement area? Or is there any municipalities that would like additional settlement area lands considered? And so Liv put up their hand and said, yes, we'd like our lands considered. And now they're asking the township, can you support our efforts to have these lands within a settlement area? So it wouldn't really be up to the township anymore if they were to choose option 2 to identify boundaries. The province would simply, if they were supportive, would draw the new settlement area or expanded settlement area around those lands. Or the township would become involved, would be processing of any Planning Act applications to facilitate development in that area. So plans of subdivision applications, zoning bylaw amendment applications, and those subsequent applications would need to be supported by servicing strategies. For example, is how are the land, like a functional servicing report that would be peer reviewed by the municipalities consultants that identified how are water and sanitary services to be provided to these lands, for example. And just the same as how are the natural heritage features protected on those lands. Those sorts of studies would get undertaken. But what Liv is asking is, can we draw the line around these lands so they're within a settlement area? And I just want to pick up on one point you made at the start of your comments, was that you did indicate, I think where you were getting at was that it's a bit of a unique situation here because these lands are within a secondary plan. So they've been planned for some form of development for a number of years now, which is different than other areas that aren't in settlement areas. So even though they're not in a settlement area, they're not really low priority rural lands. They're somewhere in the middle. They've got an elevated status already because they are secondary, do have a secondary plan on. I think that's what you were.
That's exactly, yeah. So just one more thing. So what would the cons be? Like, it's already sitting there. It already, and this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. This is something that all we would doing is we would endorse it. It would be at the provincial level, and then we would wait and see what happened and then go through that whole process that you just spoke to.
So in terms of cons, what I talk about in that respect is that since there's been no growth management exercise done at the local level or no growth management exercise done at the township to identify sort of priority lands or which land should be supported over another set of lands, LIV are really the only ones making the request at this time, right? So these settlement area expansion lands would potentially go to LIV as opposed to any other developer or landowner that might also be an appropriate location. There's just simply, whether it's Coldwater, West Shore, or Shago, there's been no studies done to identify where the township should or should not grow. So that's the only kind of other planning consideration.
But further to that, sorry, supplemental, this is an area that has already been approved. It's not like it's somebody waiting in the background and saying, please pick me, I have a piece of land so I can be in the settlement area.
It does have secondary plan designations associated with it currently that support development. Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so I think we got to be clear here. It's not an objection to the development that's the issue here. Development's fine. We know where they're going to go with most of this area, as long as it's done properly, of course. But when I look at the recommendation in the report, it says, with multiple moving pieces at the provincial, county, and local level, it is recommended that staff continue to monitor and report back. And I think with all this going on, it'll be interesting to see just what size of an area would be required to be in settlement. I mean, not the whole area that's in there now is not slated for imminent development at this time. So it just seems to me that it's not a matter of objecting to it be eventually, or part of it perhaps being a settlement area. It's a matter of, and I think it sort of relates a little bit back to what Jamie just said, it's a matter of us not deciding what the boundaries of that would be and how it would work. And we're not talking years down the road for these decisions. That's nonsense. This stuff is imminent, no matter how you look at it. You know, with all the reports that are coming in with these changes, a couple of more months to figure out exactly what works for the good people of Severn Township and our neighbors in Aurelia and so forth. So to me, it's premature.
Any other members of council?
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
With option 2, why couldn't we say something that council passes a resolution in principle subject to whatever following, to say that we haven't said yes officially, but it could be yes down the road as long as there are certain conditions that the township is requesting there.
Okay, we can. So you want to put forth another option, Councillor Taylor,
or through your worship, just if we could, like option 2, as it states in the report, just gives a rubber stamp proposal, resolution proposed by LIV, but can't we say there that, yeah, we agree to it in principle, but subject to the following, and we have some conditions that should be written down there.
So I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the conditions, if we support option 2, if and when the province, because ultimately the province will be the deciding authority, because they're the ones that ask, where do you see your settlement areas being expanded? They would have to adhere, as Mr. Robinson has said, would have to adhere to the heritage mapping, to EP lands. All that would fall into place. It would be no different than a planning application. Am I correct, Mr. Robinson, in stating that?
Yes, that's correct.
I think what they're looking for, and I think what the province is looking for, is, do we as a council support what they are saying? And we wouldn't be having this discussion if the province didn't come forward and ask, where do you see yourselves growing? And this is all, as we know, brought forward because of the immense housing shortage that we have in the province. I'll ask any further comments.
Ms. Minnie.
Brennan.
Yeah, don't forget, there's always the threat of losing the whole tax base this way. Where like you can say, in principle, I agree with it. Well, we don't agree with the area necessarily. The live development part, yeah, that's no problem. But we're not talking just about that. This is a broader map than that. Everything else goes with it. So to me, you got nothing to lose by saying, yeah, in the not too distant future, some of this area might qualify for that, but let's just wait for some of these other decisions in the next 2 to 3 months to fall, and then we can make a decision that's in the interest of all parties.
Sorry, Councillor Brennan, if you could just elaborate. I'm sorry, I missed.
Confused.
So area two has been approved. Area 3 has been approved for growth. So which?
But the settlement area boundary is bigger than that. All right?
It is. It's the piece that's in between the two of them. That's what they're looking.
The settlement area is the secondary plan area.
Correct.
Right. And so that's not just area 2 and 3. That's all that exists in there. That's already tax-paying residences that are already included in there. All right. So that whole thing goes into one package. And that package could eventually not be ours at the end of the day. Like, it's just a map to me. There is no harm in just saying, let's just see how the dust settles. We do support Live getting their buildings up there, but we're not talking about tomorrow here. Yeah, just give it a little more time, a few more weeks, a little more time till the dust settles on these many things that this report suggests are up in the air, and they are. And there's other things that are up in the air as well. What our neighbors are doing, for instance.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair, the one part is that even if we didn't endorse it, they still have that information and they could come to us, because we have sent in saying we wanted to talk to them, and we weren't sure where we were going to develop. So if this letter has already gone into the ERO, the province has seen it. So they could come to us and say, we just got this letter. Are you interested? Is this something you want? And all they have to do is look at it and ask us, and we'd probably say the same thing, that we would be willing to look at this. And it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow either. And the one thing I like about it is that we have the ability to work with the developer to ensure that this development is safe, environmentally safe, and is good for our township. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor
Minnings, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a comment. So I agree in full with what the deputy just said. I like working with partners and stakeholders. The township does not work and run itself just with the staff and the council. And although we may not have a current plan right away for the development of those lands, we did in our budget recognize an economic development report that we so desperately need. We don't have an economic development officer in this township, so we did carve out space and money to have that happen. I think a number of things need to run at the same time. And this is a growing township. This is a growing world. The the ability to work from home, the pandemic, there are so many things that change things that throughout the township, and I think even more broadly, homes are hard to come by. Within my family, I have someone who's a professional who's desperately looking for a home in this area, and there aren't any. I'm all for smart development. And if we have a partner who has demonstrated and has 2 other subdivisions going on in the township currently, that there might be an opportunity for that land. Regardless, I'm all for making sure that there's enough resources, homes, businesses, opportunities for people to have a really good quality of life here in this area. And I think by supporting this through, and it does say not endorse or recommend in the options that we're voting on, it says a letter of support, that I'm very comfortable providing that letter of support.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Jansen.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the documents that was sent over, Mr. Robinson. So is the request that Liv is asking us to endorse just to endorse the lands that they own? On page 6 of 41, they show a number of letters, land that's close to where our administrative office is. Are they endorsing that land become a settlement area, or are they endorsing, on page 7, the south of Division Road secondary plan area, that whole area be designated as a settlement area?
Mr. Robinson.
They've requested that the south of Division Road secondary plan area be a settlement area. I think their focus is on their lands that they own, but to accomplish that, they're requesting the entire area. That's my understanding.
Madam CEO. Oh, Councillor Jensen, you have follow-up?
Sorry. Supplemental, I know earlier in our planning and development meeting, it came up as well. When there's rezoning of lands, proposals to be rezoned, should we be seeking public input?
Madam CEO or Mr. Robinson?
Sorry, I need to go back to the first question. I think if council's wanting to support Liv, you would need to adopt it for the whole secondary plan. You don't want to pick and choose different developers' lands. And the public process would come at application stage. So this is just a boundary issue. Before anything was developed, it would go through a planning application that I think Mr. Robinson had already talked about, and there'd be opportunity for public comment at that point.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So staff drafted a motion that's not 100% what Liv proposed, but pretty close. So maybe in anticipation, the council may want to try and do something. So maybe just to give you a starting point, I could read that out. And if you want to can it or change it, then you can do what you will with it from there, but it might help focus the discussion a little bit. So the motion reads, whereas Liv Communities owns 387 acres of land, whereas Liv Communities owns the 387 hectare land holdings of the Hawkridge Golf Course outlined in County Simcoe Official Plan number 7, Euro number 0196113, Ministry Reference 43 OP 8221936. On the border of the Township of Severn in the City of Aurelia, and whereas the Township of Severn intends to retain the lands within its borders for years to come, and whereas the above lands are in the Township of Severn and should provide taxes, population growth, and development fees to the Township of Severn, and whereas the province of Ontario has stated its intention to tackle our current housing and long-term care crisis by building 1.5 new homes by 2031 and 30 new long-term care beds by 2028. And whereas Liv Communities could begin construction of up to 800 new homes and 160 new long-term care beds as early as 2026, if the province were to recognize the south of Division Road secondary plan area as a settlement area in the County of Simcoe official plan, And whereas this is in keeping with the proposed new provincial policy statement, PPS, currently out for comment, which would allow municipalities to expand their urban boundaries more easily by either identifying new settlement areas or allowing the expansion of existing settlement area boundaries. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Severn supports LIV's request to pursue a settlement area designation for the Division Road secondary plan area. So that's a draft. It's not 100% what they've submitted. We've tweaked it a bit, but.
Any member of councils want to speak? Deputy Mayor Cox.
I personally think that's a great motion.
Thank you.
It calculates it and puts it all in. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, I can't see you. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, that's, I like that one.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen. Did you want to speak, Councillor Jansen?
No, I think that sounds okay, and it's a good start. And we can see where what comes out of the process with the province.
Councillor Mennings.
Nothing further, thank you.
Councillor McIntyre.
I'm in agreement. It's a great starting point. Great motion at the beginning.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with moving ahead like that. I just think we're just handing it over too quick. Sorry, I can't go there.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Taylor, are you okay, or is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, no, I support the motion as read.
Okay. Seeing no further comments, do we need to read the motion again, or?
No.
We're good? Everyone good? Councillor Taylor, you're good, or do we need to read it again?
No, I'm
good.
Like I said, I support it.
Okay, great. We have a motion. Well, mover and a seconder then, please. Moved by Councillor Mennings, second by Councillor McIntyre. All in favor? Councillor Taylor?
Yes, for me. Yes.
Opposed? Councillor Brennan. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, everybody.
Great discussion.
If I can, just because we lost the original part of the original motion, I just need another motion to receive the actual report for information.
Okay, mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Okay, we're moving on to new business, which we have none. General bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So the motion reads that bylaw number 2023-31B and is hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Minning, second by Deputy Mayor Cox. All in favor? Councillor Taylor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
No announcements. Confirmation bylaw, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Motion reads that bylaw number 2023-32B and is hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor McIntyre. All in favor? That is carried.
Yes, again, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Adjournment.
That this meeting being is here now by adjourned at 3:48 p.m.
Moved by Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Minnings. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone.